No. There we go. So welcome. We are going to explore ways of teaching the Enneagram today. And in our usual style, we're going to spend a lot of time in breakaway groups. And that's because a big part of this process is to build networks from Sweden to Colorado, to Cape Town, to Joburg, and all over. So I think we should start off pretty much immediately with a breakaway room. Let's not mess about with me. So I'm just scanning the group here, and I think everyone is an Enneagram teacher in some way or other, or teacher of this kind of work in some way or other. So the first question, everybody knows the Enneagram number? Yeah. So your question is this: go into the breakaway room, and the question you have to answer is, tell the group your Enneagram type that you relate to. How's it, Alistair? And then talk about how your Enneagram type and your personality impact on how you teach. Hi, Dana. So the first question is, what is my Enneagram type and how does that impact on how I teach? So shall I give you an example of an answer? How's it, Dana? Or you feel okay to just go off and talk about that? You cool? Okay, so do you want to be in groups of 2 or 3? What's your mood today? Three. Great, Nazima, thank you. Right. Ilse, did you steal back hosting rights while I was not looking?
No, I didn't. You still host.
Where is the functionality gone? Aha.
Find it.
Yeah. So 15, that's 5. And then I will just keep circulating people and bringing them in when they arrive, because we just love to get going. I'm just checking that there's a bit of a spread country-wise. And great, good. Okay, are you ready to roll? See you later. Libby, hello. Hello. How was that?
Really interesting.
Aha. Do you want to say more?
Well, I think that we were an international group, so we first of all had to do that whole thing, which was exciting. And yeah, just new in the discovery and rediscovering, each of us in different places in our practice of using the Enneagram. but realizing that, yeah, we have to contend with ourselves in the way we teach. So we prepare according to the deliverable, but also with our own, what brings us to a place of ease is my summary and interpretation of everything.
Okay. Do you want to give us any nitty-gritty details, Steph?
Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to explain. I didn't ask for permission to share anybody else's content, but as a social 7, my biggest challenge is to complete tasks as opposed to flit from this to that to the other. So in a teaching or a group context, it's not to get derailed off by somebody else's question or somebody else's digression, but to contain that and then to stay on focus if that's the main target.
Okay.
So I'm countering my own behavior, my own natural instinct.
Okay, great. And there's a couple of 7s in this group. And so there's a bit about sort of staying on target. And I'm wondering if that Enneagram theory about kind of avoiding pain applies in the facilitation context as well. Maybe Steph, you want to comment, or Ingrid or Alistair or anyone else?
So I guess the avoiding pain resonates because I don't want to disappoint the person that's asking me something that I'd love to get derailed by, but I have a commitment to everybody in the room. So I'm avoiding the pain of disappointing others, self and others.
Steph, I want you to dig deeper.
Whoa, shoot. Why did I open my big mouth?
Brilliant. I'm just curious. Like, you know, when sometimes you have to bring, one feels one has to bring a home truth. Okay, this is an 8 talk. I love a good old home truth. No, it's my zone. And that home truth might hurt someone.
Now, if I've got buy-in for the group, so in a group setting, then I'm trying to hold the balance of what I've contracted for to the whole group versus a question that somebody is bringing up or something that's being flagged by an individual. So I've gotten better at the process of realizing, okay, now I've got to decide, am I going to go with the learning possibility of what this person has brought up or what we agreed to? So I might recontract in the room, but it really, it's like the 7 has to stay very focused and grounded in that moment. And it's very easy to get like, which way do I go, and almost be the bucks startled. Like, so to come down and get focused about where I'm going, for what reason, and if necessary, recontract in the room.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for opening things up. Can we hear from some of the other 7s in the room? Thanks, Steph. Ingrid, Alistair?
I'll talk because I've done so much teaching and group facilitation. That question around avoiding pain, I think, is really key. And I know that that is a central concern for me as a facilitator. And the way that I do it is to be super trauma informed, so that when I do bring home truths, there's a lot of groundwork being laid before that about how these are adaptive strategies, that no type is better than any other. They're a compensation for early childhood deficits, etc., so that I've made it very, very, very safe for people to hear the home truth about the ego as a disidentified thing. So this is not you, this is your coping strategy and it has certain limitations. So I really protect people from getting hurt. It's very, very important to me.
Or shamed.
Yes, unshaming. My whole approach to the Enneagram is, how do we unshame people?
Beautiful. Very beautiful. How do we unshame, normalize? And how do you unshame? You normalize, you say it's a childhood experience. What are the other techniques that you use to unshame?
It's really to validate the genius of the ego as an adaptation. So if you're an Enneagram 2 and your needs were shamed as a child, then to become manipulative and seductive in order to elicit any care at all was a really good idea. And to not express your needs was very, very smart, because your needs were shamed out of you and were amputated, as your metaphor. And yeah, just to really, really reinforce the fact that the ego strategy makes a lot of sense. And that later on, when we get into adulthood, we realize the limitations of that strategy and how it's almost a pseudo-adult that stepped in when we were little. And how do we unburden that pseudo-adult and allow it to relax? How do we allow our personality to relax? So it's really, I think the main thing is validation.
Beautiful. And so that also implies that you teach from an object relations position. Because it's going to come up later, but some teachers don't come in from childhood strategies. They come in from somewhere in the ether.
Yeah. I teach from the heart wounds, and yeah, the object relations give rise to the heart wounds. And then out of that, there's a whole defensive stance that one needs to adopt. And that the deficits in the holding environment could be huge, like really severe adverse childhood experiences, or it could be something that is just a rupture in attunement that happens often, or, relatively subtle forms of emotional neglect. But really, really letting the person off the hook for their ego strategy, that it's innocent and it's not calculated. It's a natural, emergent way of keeping a person safe.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for that. Who would like to comment next? Maybe from another Enneagram perspective, maybe from the sevens, maybe from another group, maybe from the same group. Pete, are you rustling your papers or are you ready to talk about the 8?
My dog is walking across some flip charts, so neither.
Well, sorry, you're next.
So this is an 8 style ask, is it, Julian? Okay.
Yeah. How do 8s facilitate? Yeah.
So I can't speak for other 8s. I can only speak for myself. I was the only 8 in the group, so no triangulation. But what I'm aware of in my patterns is I like structure and frameworks and things like that. So I have to make a conscious effort to make sure that there's enough freedom and looseness to give the space. What is this one? We are always aware of that underlying nag of need for control and to get the task done, or to set the objectives of, meeting the client's objectives or whatever it may be, and to hold that. I've had to learn to hold that lightly, because it doesn't always serve to rush through to the end if the foundations aren't there. And a natural disinclination to shape from personal side, which again I've been working on, to be that first domino in the sort of vulnerability chain, are all things that came up. I think through the conversation, two things that I became more overtly aware of for me, which were interesting, was the instinct, the SX instinct for me, to avoid the temptation of locking onto another SX or another few SXs. And the coping strategy, my SP is very repressed, and I've outsourced things like air cons and water breaks and loo breaks and all of those things. I outsource them to somebody in the room, because I can just go into my bubble and kind of carry on. So I need external reminders of those aspects.
Yeah.
So that's what came up for me in terms of the group. I was really interested to just hear the different styles, as always, and how we all have our monsters and to deal with, and how the others have dealt with them.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the locking onto the other SX is something I do. It's actually quite funny, because you're kind of revving yourself up and you're getting incredibly excited and it gets thrilling. And to keep the tone from this intense SX tone to something more SO, to something more self-preservation. And there's a lot of sort of SX, instinctual subtypes, SX, that facilitators that forget all the loo breaks and all the drinks and food. Yeah, so thank you. I'm also in the 8, and I find I love to show off quite a bit, and I'm happy to cast myself in front of a group and be stampled on as long as I'm in the limelight. It's okay. I quite like an intense experience, and I have to watch for that. And I'm happy to use myself as a case study, and create an opening for other people to be wrong. But sometimes that also doesn't work. It just looks stupid. So I have to watch that. Ilse, do you want to, Libby, I don't know, are there any other 8s here? Ilse? No. Do you want to comment, Ilse?
I don't have that much experience, Julia, but from what I was just thinking, what Pete said about structure is I actually really don't enjoy the structure. I'm much happier winging it, coming at it from. So when I first started doing feedbacks, I was just winging it and going off piste completely and not getting halfway through anything, because I was just so excited about where it was going. And now I've gone completely the other way, and I'm following the report like a formula, and that's not making me happy either. So I'm going to have to find a somewhere in between. And I'm not sure what part of my personality is making me go either off-piste or formulaic. I don't know what that plays into. But yeah. That's
cool. Thank you. We're going to have some more in-depth kind of digging around the relationship between working from the person or working from the theory as our third breakaway group. So we're definitely gonna go there as well. All righty. Anybody else want to talk? 9s, 1s, 2s, 3s. Tessa, hello. 4s, I think there's
hello.
4s going on, 5s. Who would like to speak next?
I can speak up. This is Dana. I was with Ingrid and is it Rikus?
Yeah.
And I was sort of shocked when Ingrid spoke because I felt like we were on complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And we talked about, because I lead with 6 and I've got very high self-pres, and Ingrid was saying she's leads with 7, 4, and 9 and is really high SX. And so I think that Pete said it beautifully, this how do we lean into the balance between freedom and structure? Because I can do the structure and I am gonna, what do you mean you wouldn't think about having a loo break or a refreshment break, or how can we possibly not take care of ourselves? It's this what occurs to me. And it really is all about that balance, because we certainly need that structure and we need to think through what might happen and how do we care and make the participants feel safe and meet the needs of whoever is paying for this, and at the same time create the spaciousness that people can have learning and growth. So I don't know, I'm just reminded of that in this conversation.
Dana, what Enneagram type do you relate to?
6.
Okay, so
6.
Okay,
6.
so that's the structure. Nazima, do you want to pull in here as well? Actually, Nazima also comes or relates to that.
So I'm a self-pres 6, and I mean, Dana, a lot of what you're saying resonates for me in terms of the structure, because I also quite like the structure, making sure that I know that I've gone through everything. But I try to kind of be aware of the instincts quite a lot, because I'm self-pres, I'm trying to just relax into kind of like, what about my social instinct and my one-on-one instinct? And my 7 wing has helped me quite a lot, just to kind of just play a little bit, be a bit lighter, not so intense. I mean, my feedback I've gotten before is that I just go straight for the jugular. I just kind of like let's just get through this work and get it done and move on. So I think it's just about being able to just relax into things and be curious about who's in the room and which types they're leading from and what the kinds of questions that they're asking. So I think when I'm more curious about what's happening around me, I get less obsessed about my agenda, what I need to get through. So that's really helped me. But I feel like the structure, like too much structure kind of makes me rigid, and then too much freedom leaves me kind of feeling chaotic. So it's almost like wanting to get the balance between those two, like the structure and the freedom, as you say, without it becoming rigid and chaotic. So I'm kind of aware of those 4 things as I'm facilitating.
Beautiful. Sounds like this balance between structure and fluidity, flowing and theory is something we kind of all battle with. Thank you, Dana. And
can I say one more thing? I'm noticing also this balance of naming and like courageousness almost, and safety. Like, does that make sense? Like, creating a safe space, a safe container, and at the same time being courageous in naming what's going on and what you're seeing, and that that learning and growth requires both, and navigating that balance. Because I have to really work on the courageousness in the concern for hurting people, and so I can make what feels like a safe space, but if I'm not really intentional about it, I won't really challenge people and create the space that really is a catalyst for their growth.
Yeah, because it can be very unsafe out there if you trigger people. So that's that 6-ish thing about staying safe. Tessa, we're talking about facilitation. You're also in that 6-ish space. I don't know if you want to chip in or not.
I'm in the 6-ish space.
What are you? 1-6? Am I wrong?
145.
145. Okay, Cool. Sorry about that. All righty. Anyone else want to say something? We don't have to go through all the numbers. It's just more to really heighten this idea that our personality impacts on how we facilitate, what information we accept, what we don't accept, the kind of people we're drawn to in the workshop, what we consider successful. So maybe let's test the fours on what is the mark of a good workshop.
Julia, one
Yeah.
more 7.
Mm.
I've got a bad connection. That's why I couldn't speak earlier. Hope I can manage to speak now. I lead from a 7 energy, and earlier this year, I was doing a group circle facilitation for a group of creatives. And being a 7, my plan was to do like a journaling exercise, which is sort of thinking based, because most of my work is thinking based. My initial coach training is in neuroscience, so that's thinking based. And I was lucky that in that session, something just happened naturally, that they started creating their own stuff, painting, how to express what they were not happy with in their own organization. And for me, that was a learning opportunity to say, it's not always a thinking approach that works in terms of facilitation. They were more into creating stuff, and that's their way of expressing themselves. And to answer your question about pain, for me, it's more in the sales meetings where I'm always looking for the pain point of the client. So if you don't have pain, I can't help you. Or if that pain is not deep enough, I can't help you. Even my mantra is from pain to progress. So that 7 energy is always focusing on moving people forward. So I try not to go back into the past for clients who want to stick in the past. It's always to try to get them to move forward. So that's how my 7 energy translates into my coaching space and how I do sales.
Okay, interesting. So very future focused in that 7-ish kind of way. Thanks for that, Alistair. Groovy. I'm keen on hearing like just from some other people, and I'm particularly nosy about the 4s and Susan. Yeah. Susan, which Enneagram do you relate to? I can't remember, was it 1?
No, the 2 social.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the two social, and the trifix that I feel is 259 that comes up for me.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting topic because I've got 2 programs coming up. One is my own retreat experience, the varied group, and the other is for business owners, women business owners. It's coming up. And as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, and it's seeming that a lot of these women business owners are 8s. I'm finding a pattern in it. And
yes.
Things. So my two social, what I've been working on is I can feel this element of trying to give something really good, to please, that, and on that group level. And as I become more aware of my own energy management and on that, and always giving, oxygen mask on the self, and kind of working with that. So, and what's the experience they're going to have? I could get so caught up in what's the experience I'm trying to help create for them. So that's with my own retreat that's coming up, and I've kind of have worked on trying to, and I'm listening to the others. I look at what may be good for me with the learning and with the body and all that, and what can I, what will create some space, for others with that, and trying to let go of, and maybe this is the pride coming in, of having to do it all, of it all being perfect, of it being so right. And it's like, I'm going to do the best that I can. So, and that intellectual part with the 5, or just giving out so much information, that's not the two so much, but that other element. So I think with the 2, that's something I've worked with. And what I've also have learned is to speak up more. I work on trying as a 2 to speak up more, even in that disruptor kind of a phase, you know, with on the map or whatever, you know, being able to create some discomfort if possible, you know, having them step into and feel and sense, and not just it being a, you know, feel good kind of experience, if that makes sense. So it's like, you know, what's, you know, what's going on, and doing it with compassion, you know, with all of this, but so it's not so much people pleasing. So that, again, is one of the things to work on. With this group of women 8s coming in, I've been thinking like, oh my goodness, I better make sure, you know, I can hold that space, the energy with these 8s, because I know 8s like to have strength there too, to meet that forward. So, again, that awareness of that, because my 8 can be low, but I know I've worked on that as a 2 going to 8, and it's helped. The more I stand up in the room with presence and with some energy and power, I feel like there's a whole different shift in how I as a facilitator show up. So.
Interesting. You know, so much in what you say. And one of the things I was thinking is, you know, for 8s, the development pathway is 2. I mean, maybe let them rescue you, show them how they can be soft. It's such an interesting kind of thing. You could play it kind of either way. They do respect strength, though. I think that's really good insight. Thank you for that, Susan. Beautiful. And lovely to hear the 2 perspective in there. I don't know, are there other people that want to talk? I've got 2 more questions to run through, and I'm not sure how you want to roll. So can I let you have the option of making the choice? So the next question would be something like, which Enneagram type irritates you the most? And how do you play fair in the workshop with those people? And then the third question is, do you teach from person to theory or theory to person? So what we can do is try and cover both questions. Would that be okay? We've got an hour left. Okay, cool. Right. So I want to just talk a little bit about being fair, and maybe we can hear the other voices when we explore this question. So when we're teaching the Enneagram, our irritations with certain kinds of people pop up, and we're not always aware of them. So the one thing we can do is scapegoat people in the group, or conversely, we can let the group scapegoat us. So you might think this is not possible, but I have got a really good example of how I was working with nurses, and they were all very sweet, kind Enneagram 2s and 4s and loving, good people, and some nice, good ones. And the anger that I represented to the group was incredibly difficult for them to digest, and it undermined me professionally. It was okay. It was 20 odd years ago, but it stuck with me. So while I was trying to bring anger into the room and bring it to be accepted, this became an opportunity for the group to project their anger on me and turn against me and scapegoat me, which was a really interesting experience. And from that experience, I developed this term called being chihuahua'd, which is when lots of people bite you at the same time. It's not like a giant big ulceration that takes off your leg, but lots of people take small bites out of you as a facilitator. So that would be the discussion: who irritates you and who is irritated by you, and how do you deal with that so that you can play fair in the facilitation room? You cool with that question? So I'm going to send you off in groups of 4. And I will send you for 15 minutes. Bye-bye. How was that? Andrea, you look like you found that funny. How was that for you?
It was great until Ingrid started talking about 4s going on in their self-analysis, unaware of their impact on others. And I was like, no, I would say that I'm highly aware right now, but also I said might want to check with other people in my life to see if they think that's true or not. So I was having a self-reflection moment about, as always, like, are we as far on the path as we think we are?
Yeah, that's the thing. I know that story. Yeah.
The path lengthens.
The path lengthens. Miriam, I think that's probably right, sadly. It just gets longer and longer.
That's right. It does. Yeah.
See, I always think of it as a labyrinth. I think I'm moving right toward the center, and then there's like a hard left, and I'm all the way on the outside again. So,
oh, yeah. It's a conundrum.
Julia, would you speak to, because we were talking about, Ingrid I was saying I have awareness. I do have awareness of the group. I am calibrating to the group. And Ingrid was commenting that, well, then you don't have repressed social instinct, and I have 0 social instinct. And it's something my whole life, aversion to the group, lack of trust of the group, unless I create the group, right? And moderate the group and everything else. And so I'm curious if you'd speak to that for a moment, because having just facilitated my first really big group, or if anyone wants to speak to this, I felt very calm, like my first facilitation gig ever 2 weeks ago in front of 50 people. And I felt very calm and very grounded and very present and very aware. And I'm self-pres 4 with sexual close, right? And 0 social. And so I'm not making up that I've mastered my social instinct or anything. I'm just curious as to when we talk about what triggers or what wasn't, I had no triggering around that. And I'm also totally unaware of how that worked out so well for me. I'm not sure that that's relative, if this isn't synergistic with the topic we're covering and what people want to talk about, then I have no attachment to having this conversation right now.
I think it's interesting because it speaks to our relationship to the group, and to ourselves, and different. I suppose if one felt that one was incredibly lovable and it wasn't a fragile state in front of a group, then that might make you more confident. But I think a lot of people feel anxious in front of groups that size. And then there are other people that quite like feeling anxious. I love feeling anxious in front of a group. I don't know whether it has much to do with social. I have absolutely 0 social as well. And I try to ensure that I care about the group. I know that sounds funny. Instead of just be there for my own pleasure, and because I can also rev stuff up because it excites me, rather than focusing on what the group is needed, what the group needs. I don't know what it means in terms of fear of big groups. Maybe the other people that want to comment on that, if there's any relevance. Yeah, Libby.
Well, no, actually, I have more of a question in this topic that we're on, and how our instincts could be more at play than our types.
Yeah.
I'm curious about what you would say about that.
Yeah, I think so. And the more, there's a whole lot of, I mean, when you look at things like sex or money or food, often it is the instincts. Like we've got a business full of Essex people. Every meal must have chili on. It must always be too much. It must always be intense. There must always be a ginger drink that knocks you on your head as well. And I think there's that. I think the instinctual subtypes play a huge role, huge. But I suppose they sort of work out in Enneagram type ways. So, for example, when I work with SX3s, facilitating as I do a lot, that's an intense engagement that works incredibly well, that flows well, that the technical stuff works, that you flow with the group. When SX8, which is me, works with a group, I quite like being at odds to the group from time to time. So I like the intensity, but I like it to be a little bit, gritty. I think that's a great point, Libby. Anybody else want to comment on that? And then some people who don't step in because they're protecting themselves in those big groups. Yeah, Miriam.
What you just said really resonates with me. It's like I just like instantly notice that assumption is, well, that's a great way to move forward. Oh yeah, I agree with you because I do that. And it was how much of that is so automatic, that instinctual too.
Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, internal locus of control, external locus of control, what is pleasure, what is development, all of those things get informed by those subtypes.
Right.
Yeah. Did any of you chat about who irritates you and what you do about it? And who do you irritate? Other than Andrea. Libby, do you want to say something?
Yes, we did. We talked about it, and I mean, I would just speak for myself. It's interesting, Julia, you being an 8, and I have a good friend, colleague that I've known for years and years and years who is an 8. I don't know her instinct. And to this day, she intimidates me, even though we know each other so well. It's like a a physical almost intimidation when we connect. It's hard for me to explain. I find myself having to really like stand my ground, and I think it makes me not really being able to fully open up, because maybe I don't feel safe. I don't trust the space, and I think she thinks she's aware. But it's like to this day. So I find that really interesting. And then, my own kind of realization as a 3, how someone can experience me without me meaning to have that come across at all. And so anyway, very interesting.
Very, very interesting. Yeah. And when I work with Simon, he does find me incredibly irritating quite a lot of the time. But it's now 12 years down the line. And we argue.
Yeah. What is he? And how does he lead?
3, SX3.
Oh, okay.
Quite 8ish. He'll just take me on. And if he doesn't in the beginning, so I shouldn't be telling you the secrets, he would do like squeaky coke. He's like behind me when I was talking. And then eventually it became more straightforward.
Yeah, I'm much more social, really self-pres, but just barely. But so it could make a difference too, because I don't take her. I don't take her on. My
Yeah, I mean, what's happened with us getting involved in arguments is that, so firstly, it's interesting as to how arguments between facilitators disturb or don't disturb the group. You know, if they're used to their parents arguing, often they're okay with it. And if you can argue in a functional way to show people it's okay to have conflict, even when you're leading group, you're actually figuring stuff out, then that's also useful. And I do have to pull myself back because I can be too big and too dominant. But it's taken me years of bad feedback.
I'll give you some more, Julia.
Yes, give me some more.
I had a good go at the 8s in my feedback.
Yes.
Even though I adore you, the 8s in a group can really drive me up the wall, and the 7s, because they're like quite, there's quite a lot of talk and fearlessly stepping into just share their brainwaves. And my, I don't know, I must have a strong 6 because I just want to cut them down. And I want them to, but I think it's I'm a 9, and I think it's me wanting everyone to, you know, have a chance and be able to get the opportunity to come into the room and have their voice heard. And it's that desire that makes me find the 7s and the 8s quite difficult in a group. And also the thing that I know is that the 3s find me really irritating because of that stuff, because I'm like, I always feel like the 3s are trying to get me to, you know, can you just get to the point, rather than fiddling my way around it and trying to get everyone into the room, and they just want to like get on with it. so
beautiful. And Adam, how do you like try and balance out these different feelings about the different people and allow them a fair play in a group? I mean, 8s, you might have to, how do you work with that?
I've also been very intimidated by 8s, but actually I think maybe through interacting with more 8s, seeing that and beginning to get a strong understanding of 7s. My wife is a 7. I see I sometimes get it wrong with the 8s because if I go back, I sometimes can be a little inappropriate. Like I might go back too hard or in a slightly rough way that I don't know, suddenly makes me feel a little bit because I want to be their friend. So I'm certainly with the 7s in a bigger group, partly because they're maybe more rare. Certainly in my working world, a 7 is there's not a whole lot of them, so I quite welcome that voice in. I have no idea how to deal with 3s.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, if I can sort of maybe summarize in a kind of an 8ish way, it's like a trial and error thing. Try this, try that. Sometimes I come across too sharp, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I balance, sometimes I don't. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes I get a bit defensive or feel criticized, you know, and that'll also get me on the back foot and get my heart rate up, and in a session I've certainly had that. If someone pushes back an 8 pushes back at me in a session, I'll be very much on the back foot and scrambling to try and, you know, plaster over the crack that just seems to have emerged.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Can I give you a tip about 8s? Step into them, not away from them. Even if you don't ever speak to them again, just move closer, because then they know, it's more equal. Or they know that they've pushed too hard. or they know that somehow you care about them and they've pushed too hard. Something happens. I don't know. It works for me. Step close to me. Thank you. What about Lolly? What do you think?
Hey, Julia. So what I'm thinking right now is it was interesting for me that in our group, immediately it went to 3, 7, and 8, really. And that made me think about the assertive stance or the aggressive stance, and what energy that just carries with it generally. And would they be like on the the top, the highest part of the list across the board because of that? Because I think it is that energy that you have to deal with. You can't just ignore. It's there, it's present. You're feeling it. So you are having to kind of, to respond to it, to react to it, to decide around it. So I thought that was interesting. And then, so in my group, Libby shared a story that really made me reflect a little bit around my own passion and my own way. And I said that the 3s can be a bit of a trigger for me, because especially when they are in that altogether successful, I'm living the dream, I got this, I know how to navigate it, just that whole and then it's almost, because I have a friend actually who's like that, and she represents everything, and there's times I'm like, is this almost masochistic that I'm in this friendship? Because often I have to do a bit of work afterwards to kind of just bring myself back to it's a different path. We're equals. It's not that something is missing from me and I don't have that, but it's quite a bit of work. And I know we've had friends in the group who've actually just stepped away because it's just been too much. But there's almost that thing in me that's a cop-out, and I need to get to that point where it doesn't. I don't have a button to press. So yeah, that's where I went with all of that.
Yeah, I think that's great insight. My sense is like, so for me, I'm terrified of 9s because I can't read them and I don't know that aspect in myself well. And so the work for me is trying to get into my 9ishness so that I can embody it and therefore see it and work with it outside. And maybe that's a way for people to go forward. But I think we all have to work our way around that. And does that make sense? That maybe there's, part of you that the 3ish bit is not well developed in you, and like you got to build that section up, go out and
150%. Very true.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a fun thing if you feel up to it to look at a group as embodying you, and which part of the group are you going to let through, and which part are you not going to let through. I know it sounds a little bit narcissistic, but actually you're making sense of the group through your eyes, and so in a way it is you. Just if you're in the mood for a little game, like, which part of this group am I not letting in today? Am I not letting in the nice people? Am I going to knock Susan out of the deal? Just fun. And how do we balance all those aspects? Rickus and Susan. Yeah. Rickus.
Julia, there was a shared observation in our group that it seems to be more a matter of maturity than the Enneagram styles necessarily. That lower maturity, they tend to be equal opportunity irritating, and then with high maturity, it sort of becomes easier to interact with everybody.
Interesting. And why do you think that is?
I would imagine there comes greater self-awareness with maturity, and that they more people are more aware of what they bring into the world at higher maturity levels, and compensate for that to some extent, and incorporate feedback on the fly, modulate their expression.
Yeah, yeah. Anna, I don't know if you want to comment on that before we go to Susan, because I know you're the expert here. And we don't know you so well here, so we got to hear your voice.
Thank you. Tessa and I, we both made an observation that we notice when, as Tessa puts it, when 3s or 5s think they are a 2. So you notice the dissonance, and I call it a fake. The thing that startles me is when I observe someone who is not self-aware and is trying to be, let's say, a 2, whereas the type is something totally different. So I notice how I react. I said first I lose interest. Well, I disengage. In other words, when I notice the dissonance, then the person is not self-aware. So I can't really trust my guts, or I don't know the types or whatever. So I don't know how to deal with this. And there's no contract for, let's clarify what you are for real. Unless there is such a contract, then I could point a question that sort of brings some clarity into it, or awakens that self-awareness in that person or in the others in the group. But usually it's not the point within the whole group interaction. So my way of playing fair to that person is to let them be. Just to let them be. And then I move on in order to sort of dampen it a little bit in me. So we don't have contact. So full contact. So I disengage. That's what I noticed, prompted by this Tessa's observation. So it's sort of part of my experience too. Which connects to what Rikas is now saying. It's since I'm not familiar with the types, I can't really operate in that language, but I can certainly relate to the maturity and the level of self-awareness.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to hear your comments on dissonance. That as a facilitator, you're a dissonance sensing kind of machine, and that's the disturbing bit to you.
Well, a little bit. When we are all more or less aware of ourselves, so my mind starts to wonder: are you really not enough self-aware of your type? Let's put it this way. In this context, or is there a reason for you to behave as if you were a 2? And I have no way of knowing at the moment, so I don't want to be unfair. I just call it dissonance, and then I do whatever we are here to do. So it becomes like an observation.
Very interesting, because and this is going to sound incredibly unfaithful to the Enneagram, but you can pull the model way out so that it becomes so expansive, each number can hold everyone, or you can hold it incredibly tightly. And so when you feel like it doesn't feel totally right, a lot of Enneagram teachers might try and get more tight and wedge that person in more fully. And actually, Anna's technique of pulling out and let it would be a much more appropriate way of dealing with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can use the tool very expansively and include the whole world, all very tightly. And like, how much do you trust the tool? Andrea, thanks. Okay, thank you for that. And now Susan, and then let's do the last question very quickly. Thank you, Anna.
Two ahas that I've kind of come up with, and from this conversation when people said, and seeing what happens with me is that this aspect of what type may trigger you, or how do I feel something more. And what as I thought about it here in this conversation for the first time, the 7s and the 3s, sometimes the energy or whatever, I realize there's something there that can be, but so, and those are the two lowest, those are two of the lowest energies that I have. So I'm wondering if there's a connection between what's low in me and what feels disconnecting to me, feels like it's not as familiar. And I, want more 7. I mean, this is like, bringing these up. The other thing is, and I'm curious, because it's like, Ingrid, your energy is a 7 SX. I'm very comfortable with that. But oftentimes it's the 7 energy that's just like, it almost feels like an SX energy, where it's just like a high and going out. I realize when that's going on, I have to really center myself, and there's something to it. And it's like, okay, is that SX energy, which can show up in different ways with different types, and like a 3 SX. That sets me, that I have to really ground with, and it's something, it's a little bit more offsetting to work with, I've realized. So I'm curious on that. And again, however you are in the work that you have in your energy, Ingrid, I don't pick up on that at all. It's not that, but I'm thinking of others that I have. So those are just 2. It's the instinct of the SX, how that may be in certain places with the type, and those types that I'm low in, being curious about that.
Yeah, I think the ones you low in or high in fact, because 7s can drive me mad because they don't finish anything. But 7 is one of my big high types, and I don't finish anything. So, I'm irritated because they're showing me up as who I am. So I think it could be low or high. And there could be so many factors involved. Yeah, thank you. Can I send you off for one little last group? And this one is going to be very quick, 10 minutes. And Dana, it's to talk about whether you teach from the person to the theory or the theory to the person. So you might, for example, have someone get up as an exemplar and talk about their life history. And then you as a facilitator might comment and say something like, this pattern is typical of an Enneagram 7. That would be from the person to the theory. Or you might teach the theory and then get people to link it to their lives. Can you go off and talk about that? I see some people have gone, and I will, Palali, thanks for coming, and then I will send you off and we'll see how everyone matches. You cool? 10 minutes, quick sticks. See you in a moment. Hello.
Hi.
Back again. Hi. So, did you find out where your habit lay? Ingrid, you want to talk about that? I see you've got the nod.
Yeah, we all went from theory to person. My reason for that is that I don't ask individual types to speak about their type if they're new to the Enneagram, because very often they bring in a whole lot of stuff that's from other areas of their type, and they overgeneralize, and they're not giving an accurate picture of the type. The closest I've got from to going from person to type is to get people into type groups with their reports and with information, and then given that group the task of teaching that type to the group. based on what they found in common. And then I give them like 3 things to look at, like the core fear or the lost childhood message and the defense mechanism, whatever. And then they have to teach the room. So they're very equipped with solid insight before they do that. But more importantly, it's to kind of teach the archetype, so to distance it from those people. And that's part of the safety thing, is these are the archetypal patterns, wada, and then ask them what they relate to, rather. Also,
Good.
that take it or leave it thing, like if this resonates, great, chuck it.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone want to comment on that?
I love the idea.
Yeah.
And I've seen that similar, and I learn every time I hear from a type, you know, more about what triggers, what's the wounding, you know, what shows up, just to understand that more.
Yeah, I mean, I teach the opposite way, and I'd be interested to hear other people that teach the opposite way. And I think all of the things that you said about the danger of teaching the opposite way, that's all completely valid. What I quite like is, so often I'm working with natural teams. So like people want to know who's in the team and what their life was like, and or sort of leadership bands, you know, like all these people at this level. I don't know if there's a best or better way of teaching, but I quite like it when you have exemplars, and you to kind of feel your way into the group and see how deep you could go. But maybe there's a way of, I think there's a way of doing it where people identify common traits, or common irritations, or ways in which they see the world in a similar way, and building from that. And then all the time holding the framework quite lightly, so that, you know, you can say, well, these are sort of traits of this, but obviously people are going to be different because of this, 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 and this, and the Enneagram can never describe anything. And then, because I'm always as well teaching maturity as well, so you can talk about the mediating influence of maturity. But I think it is a little bit more dangerous maybe than the way you're teaching, Ingrid, because you're teaching an archetype. And so when I teach from exemplars, as we do a lot in our business, then you have to keep saying, well, the theory says blah, blah, blah. What do you think? How does it work for you? So you keep distancing it away. And then as part of that, we would use the group to ask the questions. So we'd say to the group, what do you know about these guys? What's similar? So if there were a bunch of 8s, they might say, well, they're all scary. And then we might start a conversation around that. I just think it's really interesting to kind of think through how we teach. I don't know if there's a best way. Who else would like to comment on that? On how they teach, or, yeah.
Could I ask Anastasia to just go back to what she was saying, because we got yanked out and it was really interesting, because she's got like a continuum thing going. It was fascinating.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, thanks. This dichotomy, person to theory and person, you can see it as a dichotomy, right? You can even a polarity if you wish, if you try to do it this way. Or you can see it as a continuum. So you like a thermostat, as I said. So it could be a little bit more of theory and less of a person for, as I figured, number 5, who is more tolerant to theory and may be interested. Not that I know, but that's what my group mate said. So you can give a bit more theory to a person who's prone to operate more in the cognitive theoretical space, and that would do the trick. Whereas you could start with more the real life, sort of tapping into the experience of the real life for another type of person, and then you can back it up with theory or something. So that would be person to theory, sort of you. Yeah,
I like
that's
that.
what we talk about.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Adapting it to the personality type. Yeah, because the 5s hate being up there as exemplars. You know, so
thank you for teaching me that also, because I'm not very savvy at types, but this will stick with me.
Yeah, it does require quite a level of sophistication. And I think, you know, when you look at Enneagram teachers, how they kind of might come in the beginning and teach the theory and then start building. And I've seen Ingrid do this iterative thing between humans and theory. Yeah, or just dangle theory in front of humans and wonder if they're going to grab it. And if they grab it, then they pull it in home. So I like that enormously, that it's probably a lot less binary. Yeah. Cool, nice. Thank you for that. Any last comments? No.
Thank you. This has been really useful. I really appreciate this session.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
I got to jump now too. It was really very interesting. Thanks, Julia. Thanks to all the partners here.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. That was wonderful. I love hearing about your teaching styles, and thank you for all my learning too. And hope to see you soon. Best wishes and lots of love, and thank you for coming.
Thanks,
Hope you
Julia.
met some
Thank you
good
for being so
people.
welcoming. Thank you. It's great
so
being with you.
much.
Thanks, Anna, for coming. Please come
Sorry.
back.
Yes, I will. You bet.
Come and present. Come and do something on maturity. Waiting.
Okay. Let's do so.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ilse.